everyone, we are Endor Pharmaceuticals, and we are here today to present the drug Revin to the FDA board. As said before, we are Endor Pharmaceuticals. We are located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We are researching under Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, and we are researching the drug Revin, which is intended to treat OCD. OCD, which stands for obsessive compulsive disorder, is a disease where people have recurring unwanted thoughts, ideas, or sensations that compel them to do something repetitively. These are known as compulsions. OCD is typically treated with medication, psychotherapy, or a combination of both. And when it is treated with medication, it is treated with SSRIs, which are associated with the neurotransmitters serotonin and glutamate.
There are several potential causes of OCD. Research has shown that abnormalities in certain areas of the brain in OCD patients, specifically the frontal cortex and the subcortical structures. Research has also shown that childhood trauma potentially leads to OCD symptoms later in life. OCD also sometimes develops after strep infections. This is known as pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptococcal infections. More research is still necessary to specifically determine the cause and mechanism leading to OCD. In terms of developing OCD, those with direct relatives with OCD are at a much higher risk. About 45 to 65% of OCD variances are attributable to genetic factors. Most individuals are diagnosed at an early age, about 19, although onset later in life is also possible. OCD affects all age groups, adults, adolescents, and children, and boys usually have an earlier age of onset than girls. Point prevalence in the community is about 1.6 to 2.3%.
The World Health Organization lists OCD as one of the 10 most disabling conditions by financial loss and also a decrease in quality of life. OCD can cause both anxiety and a decline in function. Individuals with OCD can't control their thoughts or behaviors and spend at least 1 hour a day on these obsessions and compulsions. Symptoms can affect all aspects of life, including work, school, and personal relationships.
There are some existing treatments for OCD. Clomipramine is the closest in terms of chemical structure to Revin. It is a tricyclic antidepressant. In recent years, it has been prescribed to patients with OCD symptoms less because the structure of it allows it to bind to receptors in the brain that cause nausea, diarrhea, and some other really severe side effects. They both act in the same way. However, it's very similar to SSRIs or serotonin reuptake inhibitors, but they inhibit norepinephrine reabsorption in the brain, allowing more norepinephrine to be absorbed by postsynaptic terminals, which just allows for better absorption of the brain chemical. It is similar to, Revin is similar to clomipramine in the same way, like I was just saying, as it is a neurotransmitter reuptake inhibitor. It inhibits the reabsorption of norepinephrine and serotonin, allowing for more to be absorbed. Our chemical iteration of the clomipramine chemical structure is going to allow it not to bind to the receptors that cause the extreme side effects that were experienced by those who took clomipramine.
Yes, basically we took a semi-synthetic approach and modified the chemical structure of clomipramine, particularly its tricyclic rings, to optimize efficacy and potentially reduce side effects. So for preclinical research, we completed initial and secondary screenings through a compound library. We got high throughput and high content data indicating that our drug Revin passed the initial toxicology test. So Revin passed on to the phase 1 of clinical trials. The trials were run properly. Every phase was randomized, double-blinded, and then controlled for alternative dosages and placebos. In terms of the trial's ethical concerns, we did use mouse models in preclinical research, but as of today, that is still an industry standard practice. Secondly, since all participants volunteered and we offered financial incentives to become part of the trials, participants may disproportionately come from disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds. Thirdly, although participants were somewhat diversified in race and the sex ratio, male to female ratio was 1:1, we cannot be certain that the participant demographics 100% represents the actual OCD patient demographics in the world. One way of improving our methodology is to further select among volunteers so that the group actually reflects the actual OCD patient demographics in terms of age, race, biological sex distribution. Also, instead of breaking down phase 2 dosage assignments into 3 groups, 50 milligram, 100 milligram, and 20 milligram, we can break it down even further, make the increments even smaller so that we get a more nuanced understanding of which dosage offers the optimal response while reducing side effects. Now, I would like to walk you through some findings in each of these phases, as well as give you some conclusion about whether or not we think Revan should proceed with approval and commercialization. As I kind of went through before, in preclinical research, we concluded that Revan was non-toxic or had very, very low toxicity. In phase 1, we concluded that Revan had no major life-threatening adverse effects. In phase 2, we drew the conclusion that the ideal dosage of Revan is 100 milligram, and the ideal route of administration is through a tablet orally. And then lastly, in phase 3, we saw that symptom reduction rate for Revan was 50% compared to 47% with the existing treatment, clomipramine. And also 10% of patients reported vomiting, diarrhea, and nausea. That would be 600 out of 6,000 participants in phase 3. So given the 3% advantage in efficacy, which is not significant, and that Revan has no quantifiable side effect advantage over clomipramine, we simply didn't collect that data in phase 3. I think the risks of commercialization / seeking FDA approval exceeds the benefits of doing so. As our scientific advisory board said, we shouldn't rush to commercialize Revan just yet, because all we can ascertain right now is that Revan is comparably effective as treating OCD symptoms as clomipramine, not superior, not inferior. As of right now, we need more funding to modify our methodology and carry out new trials.
For our next steps, we are seeking additional funding from the FDA to both research OCD and develop Revan further. We plan to alter the participant demographics so that they will reflect true OCD patient population demographics. We will also perform further testing in terms of the dosage of Revan. And our main goal is to make minute changes chemically to Revan structure in order to produce a product without severe side effects that we see in the other drug. We intend to create a product that will alleviate OCD symptoms without further discomforting our patients. Do you struggle overcoming OCD? Are you having an increasingly harder time controlling your OCD symptoms? So much so that they're interrupting your life? Have you struggled to find a prescription medication that alleviates your symptoms? Try Revan. Revan works to combat your OCD symptoms so you can live your normal life. Revan works with your brain to help you absorb the chemicals that combat your OCD. Become the best you and live your best life with Revan.
This is our last page, citations. Thank you.